coming up. Change, nothing stays the same. Change, yeah, you hit the ground running. Change.
We're going to talk a little bit about the Matrix and what if the Matrix was real? What if the concepts in that movie was real life? I mean, the exact analogies that the movie uses, such as the Matrix is a construct created by those that are trying to keep us in order, or those that are trying to control us and make us part of this nice little world that they can rule over. What if everyone is just trying to do something in order to get ahead in the Matrix instead of breaking free? What if each of us has the ability to be Neo? What if it's within our control, just based on how much you believe and how much you fear? Do you fear the Matrix? Do you fear society? Do you fear what may happen to you? Or can you see past it?
Yeah. What if you really realized that it was real? This, like, let's say the movie was real. How would it change how you interact with other people? What decisions you make, things that you would attempt that maybe you wouldn't have attempted otherwise? How would it change, just, you know, when something happened to you, how would it change how you view that situation? How would it change the goals that you set? How would it, what would you do different? I think that's the main thing. What would you, would you change anything? Would you be the same?
Would you choose the Matrix?
Yeah.
Because it's comfortable.
Right.
Safe. Mm-hmm. And everyone else believes in it too. So after all, you don't want to be the nut job that doesn't.
Right. There's even a term for people that get, they're habitually in and out of prison, and they call it institutionalized. And these people, right or wrong, they feel more comfortable being in prison than they do in the outside world. Because they know that they're going to get their 3 square meals a day. They know what's going to happen. They know what's expected of them. And they're actually more comfortable living imprisoned than they are, left to their own to explore, discover, learn, grow. And I think there's different grades of that in society. I heard a statistic the other day that says that 76% of people in America are living paycheck to paycheck. And that's pretty scary, because that means that there really isn't much of a future, and that is in itself a prison, of being locked into something to where by finances alone you're dictated on your choices and your freedoms and the things that you're able to do. I mean, that's a pretty sad statistic for a country that is supposed to be the land of the free, and here we have 76%. I mean, it's almost 80% of the 300 million population. They call it working poor, living check to check. And I think that, if we were to look at the Matrix, that's one of the key levers, for sure, is money. And that's one of the things we're going to want to explore on these little videos, on our little journey here, is the things that are the systems of control, the levers over people, and ways that
ways that we think about them, ways that we can perceive them differently.
Yep, and ways that we can free ourselves from those levers, ideally, and we can be unchained.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely, and that's the whole goal, is freedom.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier this morning. So long-term happiness really seems to be people's ultimate goal. If you kind of spoke with any person on the street even, what's your goal? And they may say this car or this house or whatever, but why? Why do you want those things? Is it just to have an item? I don't think so. I think it's because they're looking for a feeling that they feel that item will create in them, a state of happiness or fulfillment or satisfaction.
Freedom.
Freedom.
A freedom.
Yeah.
Dan Locke has a book called F.U. Money.
Yeah.
And he's talking about that point when you have enough money that you can tell everybody else just to, to F off. Just get out of here. I can do what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is freedom. But if you understand freedom is about your belief.
Yeah.
What are you trying to be free of? We should be trying to be free of our limitations.
Yeah.
Free of our the things that hold us back, our fears, our doubts. That is what we're talking about when we're talking about Unchained. And
Limiting beliefs, yeah.
Unchained today, in the present, right now.
Right now.
Not worrying about what's happened in the past, freeing ourselves from the past, but also freeing ourselves from the future. Being completely in the now and becoming unlimited today, so that tomorrow is that much less limited. And that's why we've called this Unchained Today. That's why we're so passionate about helping other people see what is right there in front of their face. And then we were looking at, we're talking about the Matrix here, and man, what a hell of a movie, right? It's been, I don't know,
Was it the 80s or 90s? It was
90s.
Yeah.
It was in the 90s, but I don't know if it's been almost 20 years now since that came out. And I mean, just think about the implications of what that movie is saying. I mean, are we sheep? Are we, really are we? I mean, to a large degree, we all are in some way. We all are limited by our doubts, our fears, and our belief in what someone else has created. That illusion, the hologram, right? The perception. Perception is reality. Well, what if we can perceive more?
Yeah.
And then the reality of reality is completely different.
Right. Your reality is now expanded.
It is expanded because we can see things differently. Through my kung fu training in Wing Chun and understanding how to deal with someone else's pressure, it really does have to do with all about how much work I'm putting within myself in order to experience a different reality when someone is coming at you or someone is giving you pressure. My reality changes because of how much work is being put into myself and based on my focus and how I see things, as opposed to, okay, what am I going to do in this situation if this person does this? It really doesn't matter when I'm cultivating myself being in a certain state all the time. And, trying to always break free from that matrix, that break free from what everyone else sees, how everyone else sees it, because there is more. And that's just it. The idea of the matrix is there is more. Neo, he was the one. Now, why was he the one? Well, because he could see past it. And no one else could fully see past it. No one else could fully allow themselves to. And what if you are the one? What if each of us has the ability to be the one and transcend the construct of where we are today to unchain yourself? What if?
Yeah. When you drive on the freeway, you can notice cars ahead of you. And when you notice that there's some cars, and everybody's, I'm sure, experienced this, that are putting on their brakes for no apparent reason. There's nobody in front of them, and there's not anything that's going to happen soon. It doesn't look like traffic stopped even way up ahead, but they just put on their brakes. And when I see that, I just see a lot of fear. I see that there's a lot of fear in people in general, and they're hesitant. They're hesitant about the directions that they take. And I think the thing is when you're hesitant, that's when you're not being in your spirit. That's when you make mistakes. That's when you're second guessing. That's when you're not moving confidently and empowered and forward. And I see that everywhere. And you know, just being part of Kung Fu, you become a lot more aware of it. And you know, the whole thing of it is when we're operating out of our own alignment internally and our spirit, our nature. Our nature is a perfect nature. Our nature is a limitless nature. And so when we're able to tap into more of that, we're able to actually do more and be more and contribute more and love more and give more and all those things that I would say most people would view as noble qualities. And so, you know, we're really looking at helping people kind of rethink. You know, we want to present information in each of our little episodes to get you to think freely again, because part of being chained and part of being locked in is the restriction of your thought. There was a famous quote, John Rockefeller, coincidentally, I want a nation of workers, I don't want a nation of thinkers. And when we talk about the construct and the control, that makes sense if you want to rule the world. If you want to be free, that's the exact opposite of the path you should take, the safe path. And it seems like when we become more unchained, it is uncomfortable at first because we're doing something completely new. But how much better it becomes once we're there. Once we reach that other side that we thought was like insurmountable, now we're there and we're like, wow, what was it that held me back from this for so long? It was me that was holding me back from this for so long. So we want to encourage everybody that is watching this that you are limitless, and we want to help give you kind of just things to just ponder to help you reach that conclusion on your own, because we know, just like, and I'm guilty of this too, there's nothing we can say or a way that we can encourage you that's going to get you to change until you're willing and ready to change. I was working on my flexibility earlier today with Adam, and I've done things throughout life that have made me very inflexible. And so now, you know, I've made decisions where I don't want to be that way anymore. And my body is resisting, but I didn't realize how much my mind was resisting. And so...
usually that's it, though.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's, you know, people are limited because they're unaware.
Mm-hmm.
So the entire journey of Kung Fu, the entire journey of really, I think this life is awareness, is gaining more awareness, so that when we can be at a higher state of awareness, we can see things completely different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Wayne Dyer.
Yeah.
When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Yep.
And it's, I mean, how true is that? But that doesn't mean it's easy.
Right.
Because reality that we see currently is a stubborn son of a, you know?
Yeah.
It is, I mean, it's stubborn.
It looks real.
It looks extremely real.
Yeah.
It feels real. It gives you a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like you don't know what to do. You're so used to it.
Yeah.
You're so used to struggling in this current place
Yes.
that you don't know what freedom and no limits feel like.
Yes.
We get a little bit of glimpse here and there, but then that stubborn reality comes back in and knocks us back into that. So we've got to constantly cultivate a feeling of freedom, a feeling of more,
Yeah.
you know, a feeling of no limitations, a feeling of, oh wow, it can be that easy if I am that confident in this path.
Yeah.
You have to feel super, super secure that your current reality is not reality.
Yeah.
If you doubt it, the more you doubt it,
Yeah.
the more that reality solidifies for you, because it is just what you perceive.
Yes.
And that's the same thing for Kung Fu. The pressure, the internal arts are very different than the external arts, because the external arts, for the most part, focus in on being able to be better at struggling with pressure.
Yeah.
Being able to deal in the current reality. Whereas the internal arts are, for the most part, in Kung Fu, are trying to transcend reality.
Yes.
You know, and of course you can't. We have to have the physical for everything, but man, there's more. There's more here. So when we start to doubt that we can, when we start to doubt our ability to become more, or doubt how easy it can be, what happens is we start to get distracted. We are distracted by what reality feels like, right?
Yeah.
We're distracted by the struggle that we've experienced in the past. We're distracted by the past. We're not operating in the present any longer.
Right.
So Unchained Today is operating in the present, is being unlimited today, and feeling that we can absolutely be very, very confident that there's more. Because why? Because we know it. We know like we know like we know.
Yeah.
You know?
Without any reference to what happened to you in the past, without any uncertainty about the future, of things that may happen that are all an illusion anyway. And yeah, that's the whole key.
Your past is not you.
Right.
Your past is past. What is you? You are right now. You're in the present. You are not your future, and you are not your past. And that is so hard for us to wrap our minds around.
Totally.
Because just like reality, our reality is shaped by the past
Yes.
so much. And we pull that along, that's our ball and chain, right? Our past. And maybe the worry about the future.
Right.
This is what chains us.
Yes.
But today is our chance to be unchained, right? And we you know, it's only limited by us, though. And you know, as we speak here and we talk about these things and we go through all these facets of life and you know, how to improve ourselves in all these different areas, it doesn't mean that we're by any means perfect. You know, FFP, far from perfect, right? I mean, don't think for a second that us speaking to you guys means we're perfect. But we do feel as though we can help people.
Yes.
And that's the key. We're all in this world. What's our purpose in life? My purpose? I want to help people. I want to give. And I want to help others transcend as I transcend, as we all reach higher levels, and I want to be more compassionate. I want to be more loving, you know. And then we have these fears of, oh, I don't want to get taken advantage of, right? You know, but we are far from perfect. We have our issues, and we'll go into those as we talk about all these different things. We all want to be less chained. So it's time we all explore this together, and not be afraid just because we aren't perfect.
Right.
You know, and there's fear again.
Yeah, long-term happiness really should be, I think that's really the goal of this, but long-term happiness only comes from now happiness. Like, you don't have a happy future unless you can be happy now. It's all built on what's happening right in this moment. I mean, the Declaration of Independence in our country talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Liberty, life itself, you know, the spark that makes us all individuals and wonderful. You know, when we were born, I really feel like our default was love. And then as most people get older, the default becomes fear. And so we want to get everybody back to love. We want to get everybody back to freedom, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that pursuit is an ongoing thing, just like Kung Fu. It's going to teach us things every single moment of every day. And that's the way life is. You know, I've heard this, what was the quote? The obstacle is the path. You know, life is not supposed to be easy. The path is to get through that, you know, on your own terms, without being hindered, or without worrying about what others think, you know, without worrying about the uncertain future that may or may not be the future that you experience at all. And, you know, what's the acronym for fear? False evidence appearing real, you know? So, and it appears really real.
It certainly does. I mean, think back. You know, it might have been somewhere in middle school that we started to become more limited within ourselves. Before that, we had much less limitations. But somewhere in middle school, all of a sudden, things start to change. And then into high school, of course, they're very, very changed even by the time you get there. Yeah. But that continues on, and then we get more solidified in fear and operating out of fear of what other people may think of us. Mm-hmm. You know, when we're a kid, you know, we don't care.
Right.
We don't care. We're trying to be happy, you know, and everything's happy. But then you start having doubts, and then placed upon us by other people too that have experienced fear, mm-hmm. and then, you know, saying we should be like that, right? Because, hey, you know, come down to earth.
Don't want to buck the system.
Don't
rock the boat.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, when you look at the school curriculums, and then how the path is designed, and you have a bunch of people learning the same information, and when you question some of the information even that you're learning, it goes against the grain, and there's all kinds of upheaval about that. And then as you get older and you want to advance your education, now education is extremely expensive, and most people need to take out these student loans. And so now you're indoctrinated in the system where you got to be like everybody else, and the roadmap is go get a good job, work for a good company. You need to get a good degree to work for a good company. So now you need to take on this extra debt, more burden on you, more chains that are attached to you, and you're dealing with more and more people that's saying to you can't do this, and no, you don't need to think that way. It's interesting that and the financial machine are operated by the same people, shall we say. And I don't think that that's necessarily a coincidence. So everybody, the more that you can be free of and have independent thought and question things, question everything, question what we're saying, question it all, because the agenda is one of the things that seems to be pretty darn real. The agenda of, it's for those that kind of want control of things, it's very dangerous to have people that are independent and that think on their own and that live life on their own terms. And you're going to find that when you make those steps, you're going to be in the minority. You're going to be ridiculed. You're going to be criticized. People are going to tell you, like when you start a business, like Adam and I have started businesses, People are going to tell you you can't do that. And did you know that 96% of businesses fail in the first year? They're going to give you all the negative stats and try
And
to...
because of their experiences.
Yep.
Basically, other people tell people that it can't be done because they have failed at it.
Yes. Yes.
And that is far from what we are talking about.
Right.
We are not perfect and we've not done everything right, but this is about empowerment for everyone out there. And that's what this is really about.
Yes.
This is about us, trying to become less chained by helping other people.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
And in so doing, we are helping ourselves.
Yes.
Because we're exploring things that not everyone talks about from day to day. In fact, the things that we're not afraid to talk about are the things that other people are very, very much afraid to talk about. So much so that it's considered weird in society to talk about things that really, really matter, and then, you have these people that are operating within the fears of their reality placed upon you, and then the question becomes, how much of that do you believe? Right. So when we started our businesses, how much do we believe that we can succeed in what we're doing?
Yes.
Versus doubting it, and saying, okay, well, they didn't do it, so the chances aren't very, very good.
Right. Right.
And it is about belief, and everything's about belief. Mm-hmm. Everything's about belief. I mean, we can't get away from that. We can't get away from this fork in the road of, are you distracted by your doubts, or are you attracted by your beliefs?
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing's really for sure, and I think this is a more of a Tony Robbins thing that I heard initially, but when Adam's talking about beliefs, that really dictates everything that happens to you. And if you, like us, if you're looking for long-term happiness, you need empowered beliefs to make that happen. And the reason for that is, if you, it's kind of like, when you talk about that triangle, and you have a thought or you have a belief. When your thoughts are limited, what type of actions do you typically take? You take hesitant actions, or you take no action at all. And as a result, if you take hesitant action or you take no action at all, what type of results do you get? Well, you don't get good results if they're hesitant or incorrect or kind of, half and half actions. You don't really get good results ever. Or if you don't take any actions, you get no results. And then so by the evidence of your result, what does that reinforce about your belief? Well, if you had a limiting belief and you said, well, I don't think I can do it, and so you don't really take action, you take crappy action, right? And then you don't get good results. Well, now I told you were a loser. It reinforces your limiting belief. However, if you were to conversely start with an empowering belief, what type of actions do you take when you're empowered, when you're confident? You take decisive actions. You take powerful actions. And when you take decisive actions based on certainty and strength, those are strong actions that you're going to take. Now, you take those decisive, strong actions. What kind of results do you usually get? Of course, there are exceptions, but usually you're going to get really good results, or you're going to get better than average results. And what's that going to do about coming back to reinforcing your belief? I told you you're a winner. You kicked ass today. And so it can be a perpetuating experience based on what? What belief you start with, whether it's limiting or whether it's empowering. So what we're wanting you to just, if you could have a takeaway from today, is start with an empowering belief. It's not going to be conventional. It's not going to be like most of the people in the world that you're going to be around. They're going to want to challenge your empowering belief. They're going to say things like, you can't do that. And they're going to throw in their limitations on you. But avoid even listening to that. Avoid giving that an ear at all if you're looking for long-term happiness, because long-term happiness, it just doesn't come from limiting beliefs. It's literally,
no.
That's not the way we're designed.
Long-term happiness is completely about being honest with yourself and believing that what you want is possible.
Right.
And that true belief will give you decisive action.
Yeah.
But if there's doubts in that,
That's right.
you're going to have hesitant actions.
Mm-hmm.
If, and you're just not going to go for it. You're not going to commit. You're not going to be precise. You're going to be over here, here, here because you're indecisive.
Yep.
Decide.
Yes.
You have to decide. And so we'll be bringing much more of these to you, and hopefully you've learned a lot today, and if not, hopefully at least you've gotten to think about things, maybe in a little different way, or in a way that possibly you haven't considered before. Or maybe you've thought all these things before, but you just need a little help, a little hand, a little somebody in the game with you. So your team member. And we want to be your team members to help you to become stronger. That's really what it's all about. It's all about helping. And thank you so much for listening to us. I'm really, really grateful that you could be in this moment together, helping as we help you and help ourselves to become unchained. So I'm Adam Williss. This is Mark Allen. And thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. See you next time.